been an extraordinary privilege and also great fun to have these conversations with Liveryman over the past weeks and now months, really. And today I know will be no exception. Alison, it's really good to meet you in this way, and I much look forward to our conversation. Can we start at the beginning, as it were? Tell me, where would you say you come from? What part of Britain or the world?
That's always a really difficult question to answer, actually, because I was born in Suffolk, in Bury St Edmunds, but my father was a career civil servant, so we moved around quite a lot. And my sort of early education was in Shropshire, and then we moved to Hertfordshire, and then I went to university in Scotland, and then I married a soldier, so I moved house lots and lots. So I'm quite itinerant, but it does mean that when I meet my new selection of students every year, almost everybody in the class, I know something about where they're from.
That sounds really quite exciting. So many things have taken you around the country. And tell me, you were at St Andrews, so you read history with fine arts, is that right?
Well, St Andrews and Scottish universities have a really good system that you take general subjects before you specialise. So yes, I did several sorts of history, including history of art, and I also did some psychology. And it was a really good, broad education, which I've drawn on ever since.
So, as it were, once you'd done the general things, your main subject then was what? Was psychology, was it, or? No, I did medieval history and history of art, and history of art, so the two together. Yeah, that is very good.
On Gothic churches and things.
Wonderful, yes, one of my great loves, yes. And then after that, you went into publishing. Well, no, you went into the City University. Is that right?
No, I went into publishing first and worked for Heinemann and then Macmillan, and then I went freelance, actually, because I'd reached a sort of stage in life where there were lots of things to do, but I hadn't got enough. I wasn't able to do all of them, and I'd married an army officer by then, so we were moving house. And so if I wanted to be in the same place as him and have a full-time job and we wanted to have a family, it wasn't possible to do all of them. So I went freelance and set up, and actually that's quite a good option within publishing, because publishers have always relied on an external workforce. I mean, authors are freelance, aren't they? So yes, I started working for publishing houses, and it was while I was doing that it suddenly struck me that this industry that produces a huge amount of content doesn't actually reflect on itself very much. So I proposed a book on publishing, which the publishers seemed to think was a good idea. So that was my first book.
Well, you brought together three things that interest me in a way. I mean, one is the whole business of publishing. And indeed, I've just sent off a revised version of the very first book I ever had published, which it's a significantly revised version, if you know what I mean. And bringing back into the whole business of post offices, which I know you're interested in, I managed to persuade them that the front cover of the book, which is called Pilgrims, is actually a blown-up version of a 1997 postage stamp with St Columba on it. So there you are. That's two of the things. And yeah. Anyway, so moving on from there, then you then, when you came back to do another degree at Oxford Brookes, when was that? Was that again after you'd finished doing these other things?
It was really part of it, because I helped to set up the Masters in Publishing. What happened was that I'd written these books on publishing, really to help people like me who'd gone into the industry. But what happened was that publishing came into higher education as a subject. So, of course, my books happily became set books. I suddenly found I was a set book author. And so I got quite involved with publishing education. I really believed it was a good idea. So I was involved in that early, and I helped set up the course at City, the Masters in Publishing. And then I set up one in Kingston, where my husband and I had bought a house, and that was in 2006. So I've been very involved with the development of publishing studies as an academic discipline, and yeah, enjoy that a lot.
And does your husband find it interesting to think about your work in publishing? Is he a reader himself, a great reader?
Oh, massive reader. In fact, our children think it's immensely boring that the night we met, we spent the whole evening talking about books. They think that's deeply dull. But no, he's a big reader, and he loves sort of publishing events. He always really enjoys coming along to publishing events. And in fact, he came along to the dinner when I was first time dinner at the Stationers. He enjoyed that very much.
And what sort of thing does he like reading?
Well, I suppose as a former soldier, he really likes sort of international relations, politics, although he reads a lot of novels as well. And we quite often, actually, that was the beginning of the project that I told you about, Reading Force, because actually books are a very good way of connecting people. That, you know, when your husband's away in a war zone, it's quite hard sometimes to think of things to talk about, because you're emotional to hear their voice. You don't know what to say. And actually a book can be a really good common ground between people. And that was the origin of the project I was telling you about, Reading Force, which connects.
Can you tell us more about Reading Force then, Alison?
Okay, well, I set it up when he was in his last, he was brigade commander in Aldershot. And I set it up then. And the idea really is that forces families who are separated from their wider family, because if you're constantly moving, you're not living near your grandparents, a way of connecting them and also connecting the families, the immediate family. And the idea is that you choose a book in common and then share it through, we produce these rather lovely scrapbooks, which we give out to families, and then they reflect inside, they can stick photographs in and write what they think. And it becomes a shared activity, which can be really helpful when you're going through a separation or just, you know, preparing for change. It's a way of connecting people. And I set it up in nearly 10 years ago, actually. It was 2011. And it's now operating all over the world. It's a charity, and it runs all over the world, actually. Wherever there are British forces, it's available. Stationers have given us money towards it a couple of times, actually, which is very much appreciated.
Oh, that's excellent. And did you call it Reading Force because your husband was in the forces?
Yes, I mean, it is funded specifically for forces, so it's a pun, really, on reading for forces. But we do get lovely feedback. We ask them, when they've finished their scrapbook, there's a panel on the back that says you can send it back to us at Kingston University, and then there's an envelope in the middle that they can put it in. And my idea really there was that I knew that the number of kids from a forces background who went on to higher education was significantly less than the population as a whole. So just encouraging them really to see that a university had looked at what they were submitting. So that's a sort of secondary goal.
And then you used a wonderful word, a lovely word I really liked. You talked about bibliotherapy. Could you say a bit more about that? Yeah.
Well, bibliotherapy, it is a great word, isn't it? It's about using books to do good things. So in the same way as physiotherapy exercises the body, bibliotherapy exercises, I suppose, the mind and our emotions. And this is a form of bibliotherapy because it's linking people through the power of books. And when people send their scrapbooks back to us, we do return them by recorded delivery, because obviously they're really precious by that stage. But people write such lovely things about how they valued the time together, how they turned off the telly, they really talked, they enjoyed a shirt, they had access to each other's thoughts in between phone calls. So that's the great thing about a book. If you're reading a book at the same time as somebody else, it gives you the opportunity to think about them or connect with them for a long time, because you're thinking, oh, I wonder how they responded to that bit, or what they make of this bit of the plot. So it does link people in a very powerful way. So yes, that's bibliotherapy.
I think it's a wonderful word. And I was just thinking about it when I was reading your sort of background, because I just read a biography of Lord Carrington, which was all right. It could have been better, really, I think, because Carrington was a great character. And then I'm going to go on to read Barchester Towers. It's very good reading for people like me. And but then I thought, you know, and I'm also reading a book about the Trinity at the moment, which is quite complex. So I thought I really need something to cheer me up because, you know, the world's in a bit of a mess at the moment. So I read one of my favourite books. I'm reading one of my favourite books a second time, How Steeple Cinderby Won the FA Cup. If you've never read it, it's wonderful. It's very funny.
There's a lot of value in comfort reading. That children quite often do that when they're going through tricky times. They'll sort of regress and read something they read earlier. And certainly when lockdown started, I thought, right, I'm going to read War and Peace. I've made it about a third of the way through, but I've never read it all. I have still to read it. What I found myself reading was, well, firstly I read Heidi, then I read Heidi Grows Up, then I read Heidi's Children, and I found myself reading comfort reads, which were just cheering up. Yeah,
that's exactly what this is. It's not really about football in any serious sense. It's just about, the chap says at the beginning, if you ask whether this actually happened, the only answer I can give you is, you must decide yourself whether it happened. It's very good. He wrote another marvellous book, A Month in the Country, which was made into a play. Now, you then went on also to have another initiative, get another initiative going at Kingston University, the Big Read. Can you say about that a little bit?
Yes, the Big Read. Well, it wasn't actually my idea. I went out to attend a conference. That's one of the best things about being an academic, is you get to go to conferences. And I went to a conference in America and I spotted this thing called the Common Read, which is really very common in America, to give a free book out at what they call commencement, which is when you go to have a look around your final choice. So they give this book out at commencement, and then they invite people to discuss it. And the great thing is it gives common ground in that summer before you start. And so I came back to Kingston. I tried for quite a long time to get them interested to do something similar, and finally succeeded. And we've been running for 6 years now. And what we do is, this is our Big Read for this year. And it's the first time we've done a non-fiction title. But we work with a publisher, and I don't know if you can see here. In fact, I like to tell my students that this is the most influence I've ever had in publishing, because I got Penguin to move their logo. The logo is normally, it's a big deal actually. Penguin always have their logo on the right-hand side. And we work with them, and we buy a special edition of the book, so it has a nice letter from our Vice-Chancellor in the front. But we send these out to every single student who's about to start here. And the idea is it gives people something to talk about, because we are very much, a good proportion of our university students are the first person in their family to come to university. So it gives them, you know, they're nervous. I was in the same position. I remember being nervous. And it gives them something to talk about. It's common ground. And this year, because of the odd circumstances, throughout the summer, we ran a reading club. So we got people from the university to do a sort of interview like you and I are doing, where they talked about an aspect of the book. And it did keep us all connected, I think. It's another example of bibliotherapy, your new favourite word.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and then another thing that struck me is you've received quite a number of honours, really, from within your own profession and your world you've moved in. If someone said to you, of all those honours that you've received, which one did you feel most excited or most moved by? What would you say?
Gosh, well, probably the Pandora Award, which is it's given to somebody who's made a contribution to the industry, a woman who's made a contribution to the industry. I was very flattered to be given that, and it was really through the work I've done on writing about publishing and hopefully developing other people. So yeah, that was a nice thing.
And anyone who teaches in any level of education never stops being a student themselves. And yes, that's been true for you. You've been studying in the last couple of years, and you're about to go off to Oxford to do a year in residential training. Can you say a bit about that then, Alison?
Yeah, well, I think your first point is really important, because I do think that's vital. I think if you're a teacher, you've got to be learning. And actually, that's one of the best things about teaching, is that, you know, constantly one learns from the students. One also learns from when you're presenting something, I always love the sense of not quite knowing what examples are going to pop into your head. That's the sort of excitement about teaching. But no, I have been studying theology part-time for the last couple of years, and I've been offered this fantastic opportunity to go to Wycliffe in Oxford to complete and to do a year in full-time residential. So as of next Friday, I'm going to be a student again, which is a wonderfully exciting opportunity.
Does that mean you finish at Kingston, or you go back at the end of it?
No, what I've done is taken a reduction in my contract for the year. So I'm carrying on teaching my PhD students, and also the big read, that will still remain with me, but I don't have to do any teaching myself this year or any related administration. So, I mean, it's a really exciting opportunity.
Wonderful. And at the end of it, hopefully you'll be ordained deacon and then priest.
Yes, hopefully. I mean, you can't sort of predict that, but no, that was one of the arguments I put to my head of department, that wouldn't he like to have his own vicar?
Yes, and you go to church in Southwark Diocese or Guildford Diocese?
It's Guildford Diocese. It's Thames Ditton in St Nicholas Church in Thames Ditton.
Oh, yes. Well, finally, we can't finish this without asking you the obvious question, which is, and in a way, I suppose the answer is rather obvious, that what brought you to the stationers, and when did you become a stationer and so on?
Well, I'd known of the stationers for quite a long time, and I'd been to some rather good parties there from senior publishers who'd asked me. And I became one, which was lovely. But what I discovered, which I didn't know when I'd started, was in fact my godfather was a stationer, somebody I was very, very fond of. His father he was a vicar choral in St Paul's Cathedral, and in fact is buried there, or has his plaque there. And his son became a stationer. So, you know, I joined not at all realising that I'd actually got history with the stationers.
Ah. And what does his son do? Is his son a publisher?
No, he was actually in carpets. He was a carpet person, ran a carpet company, right. but through the link with St Paul's. I'm not sure exactly what the connection was, but I know he was a stationer. Well,
I've really enjoyed this, Alison, and the thing I look forward to most of all is, like many of us, is when we can all be allowed out of our kennels again, as it were, and look forward to meeting you at Stationers' Hall, and perhaps actually having a meal, sitting next to you and hearing a bit more about so many crossovers that the two of us have. Thank you so much for being such an interesting and lively conversationalist.
Well, thank you very much. I have to say I was very flattered to be asked. I mean, it's a sort of stationer's equivalent of Desert Island Discs, isn't it? So I was very pleased to be asked.
Thank you.